DogWorks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
You can support this podcast on patreon.com/firstpawmedia.
Hello and welcome to DogWorks Radio. This is your host, Robert Forto, and today I am joined by my guest, Bob Bryant, who is the co-founder of Mission Canine Rescue, an organization dedicated to saving as many working dogs as possible and working to find them comfortable, peaceful, and loving homes for the remainder of their lives. Since 2013, Mission Canine Rescue has saved over 1,000 dogs and reunited over 540 dogs with former military handlers. This is an exciting episode. We talk about what working dogs are, their life in the military, what happens to them after they retire, and the awesome work of this excellent organization. Let's jump right in.
From First Paw Media, sponsored by Alaska Dog Works Professional Canine Training Center in Anchorage, Alaska. This is DogWorks Radio, committed to families and their dogs to build lifelong and fulfilling relationships. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert and Michele Forto.
Bob, thank you for joining us today. You are the co-founder of Mission Canine Rescue, and I'm excited to talk about all the work that you do with these wonderful dogs. And before we jump too far into the topic, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're all about, please?
Myself, I'm simply just your normal average guy. I take care of all our social media. I take care of our advertising through social channels, through the web, Google AdWords, things like that. I maintain our web presence, and I deal with financial number crunching for the organization. Outside of that, I've been involved in the credit card processing industry for almost 20 years now. I deal with merchants across the country, and I am a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I train about 4 days a week. I've been doing it 13 years, and that's at 66 years old. So Grandpa stays busy.
That sounds good. And I'm calling into California today, and here we are at the end of the year. Man, 2022 has flown by, hasn't it?
Oh, 2022 and the 2 years prior have been wild, both for growth and for just being totally unusual, of a totally different sphere.
It has, and thankfully we're coming on the right side of the pandemic. I hope everything works out well for everybody. But you guys and your organization do a heck of a lot of good work, and we're going to jump into a lot of those topics today. But I think what we should do first, Bob, is tell our listeners about the dogs themselves. I think a lot of people have a misconception about what a military working dog is, what their role is, that sort of thing. Can you give us a little bit of background about the dogs themselves?
Sure, I'll do that. And just to clarify, while I'm in California, our organization is based in and operates out of the state of Texas. We receive a lot of support from California based organizations, as well as having several military bases out here that we get dogs from. So I kind of float back and forth. To answer your question directly, the type of dogs Mission Canine works the most with are retiring military working dogs. These are dogs that have worked overseas or in the United States with a military trained dog handler, either for patrol or explosives or drug detection, or a combination of the above. They're also strictly patrol dogs, like the one that took down some of the terrorists overseas recently. These dogs, as well as contract working dogs that are privately owned dogs, not military property, that do the actual same jobs in different locations, often even more worse locations and in worse care than the military would give them. We serve that population of working dogs as well. Now, you can make me dial this in a little tighter if you'd like me to.
No, I think that's a pretty good synopsis of the dogs themselves. And it's my understanding, of course, that aside from the contractors' dogs, all of this breeding, raising, everything comes in-house, military wise. It's not like the police dogs or something like that that may have breeders that they work for, but these dogs in particular are quote unquote military bred. Is that right?
That's correct. All military working dogs since, good grief, I think 2007, maybe even earlier, have been trained at the Lackland Joint Task Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. That is the home of the military working dog program. And then those dogs, after their training, are taken to whatever branch of the service needs them, and in whatever specialty that particular branch requires. They have a breeder program as well as a puppy program, and then they have their formal training, and then the dogs are deployed from there.
And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen a lot of the recent movies about working canines. There's been a bunch of them, and I'm sure those touch at our heartstrings in more ways than one, especially with just their magnificent ability to do their job. Bob, what is the breed of choice these days? Of course, working dogs in the military have been around for a long time, not only in this country, but in other countries as well. Some of the more popular ones are German Shepherds and Malinois and Labradors and Rottweilers and Great Danes and on and on. What are you seeing the most recognized breed today in your work with the rescue?
90% Belgian Malinois, 10%, about 8% Shepherds, and then another, 2% Labs, other breeds, Springer Spaniels, even a Jack Russell. They search submarines for drugs, little tiny dogs, can do some amazing things. So that's basically the makeup that we're seeing. The Malinois is the dog of choice because they're just as fierce, they're pound for pound as effective as a German Shepherd, and they're crazy and meaner German Shepherd if they need to be. Plus, these dogs have incredibly high drive. I mean, it's just off the charts. I've owned one. I mean, even a 13-year-old dog, just absolutely insanely active. So people that say they want a Malinois probably really don't want a Malinois as bad as they think they do. That's why we really vet who gets these dogs heavily, because we want them to have a great home.
Right. And I've trained many Malinois over my 30-year career, and I always caution dog owners. I say, hey, this is like a German Shepherd that drinks rocket fuel for snacks. I mean, they are intense dogs, aren't they?
They're nuts. They'll eat your house if you don't keep them entertained. I've seen it.
So with your work, and of course you guys do a bunch of different things, and I'm going to break this down a little bit, but I guess the sort of the crux of your work is taking these dogs after they're done in their line of duty, and you guys try to figure out what's next. And I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I know just recently, like in the last decade or so, the military changed up their policies with what happens with these dogs after they're done working. Is that correct?
Well, in 2016, then President Obama signed an addition or an addendum or something to the National Defense Authorization Act, which in it had a clause that military working dogs, when retired outside of the continental United States, would be returned to United States soil, preferably, the last service place, kennel where they were located before they, when they were deployed. The military got around that by calling forward operating bases United States soil, and it kind of stagnated. Recently, we've seen some good luck in getting some dogs, especially coming from Japan, which is insanely expensive. We're talking $6,000 to get a dog back from Japan, one dog.
Wow.
So we've seen them actually put some dogs that are disposed as retired on a rotator flight, where they're moving equipment or whatever. So we're getting some help, but still the bulk of it is on the adopter or the handler if we're not in there helping to raise the funds to do it all, because the government is not going to pay a dime toward the health of the dog or returning the dog to any specific location. They're going to make it as easy as possible on themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here just with what you had said there. But I guess my first question with that is, how old are these dogs when they're done? When you're training dogs for other types of work, it could be as old as, 8, 10, 12 years old before they're done. What is the average age of a military dog that's done its service?
You pretty much just hit the nail on the head. 8, 10, 12 depends on the dog's drive. If the dog gets unhealthy or loses drive, that's when the dogs are dispositioned as retired at that point. I've seen it happen at 3 years. A dog went up leash, went crazy, bit a couple of handlers, and, immediately, the dog is disposed and retired. And, those dogs, that particular type of aggression is not a fit for our particular sort of rescue. It's more for what's the word I'm looking for? A sanctuary that will, care for these dogs, that will work with them. We don't have long-term ability to keep individual dogs. We try to get them in, work them, make them comfortable and suitable for adoption, and then get them to someone that loves them, either someone that has handled them as a priority, or if no handler is available, then to a member of the public that is able to handle a specific breed of dog and understands the nature of the dog.
So with these dogs that are in the working capacity, after they're done with their training, you said that it was at Lackland Air Base, I believe it is, in Texas. They are trained by handlers there, and then I assume are placed with a soldier at a particular unit, wherever that would be. Is it typically the same person throughout that tour, if you will? Or are the dogs just sort of part of the team? They may work with Sergeant Johnson one time and then Sergeant Smith the next. Do you know?
Okay, yes, I absolutely know. A military working dog has one handler at a time, but it can have as many as 5 handlers during its career.
Okay.
And as far as priority for adoption, the handler that has the dog when the dog is retired has first choice, then the first handler, then the second handler, and da-da-da-da-da. And people always say, well, why wouldn't the handler just automatically take his dog? Well, let's say you got a crazy patrol dog that likes to bite, he's toy crazy, and the handler's got 2 small children in the house who love toys, and they get the toy and the dog wants the toy, and accidents happen. So in many cases, they pass it to the first handler, and then they arrange it to where in most cases, all the handlers are welcome to come and visit and say hi to the dog whenever they want to, if they want to.
And of course, your work begins after the work is done in the field. Tell us that process. How did you guys get involved with this? Because I'm sure that there is just a gaggle of the number of dogs that are done, especially as we wind down from a lot of the recent wars and conflicts, etc. I'm sure that there are many more dogs than you guys can probably deal with.
Well, actually, you have no idea. It's just amazing since we started almost 10 years ago. And now what we're seeing that makes me sad is poor planning by law enforcement departments that are just wanting basically to dump their dogs on us. I mean, these are not easy to adopt dogs. These are problem children that, probably needed better training. They want you to take a dog, but then they don't want to provide help or assistance or funding for medical. And we've had to start taking close looks at the dogs we intake. Our priorities are military working dogs, followed by contract working dogs. And of course, these are dogs that are manageable and can work into our rehab program. We center on what we call 5 R's, and that's rescue, reunite, rehome, rehabilitate, or repair. These dogs, we're committed to saving any and all MWDs and CWDs that are needed wherever they're at. We will reunite them. We've reunited over 640 with former handlers in 9 years, and we brought home well over 1,200 dogs. We will rehome a dog that needs to be rehomed if a handler can't take it, and we will rehabilitate any dog that we take in that has injuries of any sort. They get the best medical care, and we help to rehab issues that can cause PTSD in the dog. We make the dog comfortable in being in a home environment. We test them to see how they are with other animals, with cats, with other dogs, and tight spaces, wide areas, and just work with them to make the best they can be while they're in our care.
So, Bob, you had mentioned earlier that the military pretty much tries their best to wash their hands of it after the after the dog is done in its career, if you will? Once you have the dogs or you have that process in place, how do you go about doing your work? I mean, are you connected in some way with the military organizations? I mean, how are you fitted into the cog of the wheel, if you will?
Well, because of the nature of our work and those individuals that have worked with us and are for us, we are well connected in the various military branches all over the world that have dogs, and the handlers know about us. It's all word of mouth, sir. Pure and simple. People love what we do and they talk about it. And the more people that find out about it, the more calls we get with people that are wanting us to take their dogs. But the military, especially, all the forts in the United States will reach out to us. All the bases, if they have excess dogs, they know who to talk to, and they reach out, and we help them with their situations one by one.
So you had mentioned that it goes through a process, and I believe you said the four or 5 R's. Which was it?
Yes, 5 R's.
5 R's.
Okay. Right, correct. Just to run over that, it's rescue, reunite, rehome, rehabilitate, or repair. Those are what we center our work on.
And repair, of course, is, as you mentioned, working through behavioral issues, potentially mental issues if they're, sort of strung out, if you will, like you said, PTSD with their work, etc.
And
go ahead.
And these dogs train like professional athletes their entire career. And when they retire, they've often got extensive, costly medical issues. And since the dogs don't receive retirement benefits, we raise the funding to give them, the treatment that they need, and we help them, recover from whatever it is.
Yeah, I can only imagine, just the wear and tear on the body. I'm a dog musher up here in Alaska, and of course, vet care is by far our biggest expense, second to food. And yeah, sure. I can just imagine the dog's knees and hips and elbows and all sorts of things that could go wrong there. And I assume that you guys work primarily on donations. You're a 501(c)(3), et cetera?
Right. We work 100% on donations. Just for instance, our last tax year, 2020, one that we filed, 93.67% of every dollar raised went directly to the work. That is truly no profit. In fact, I rethink that and think I should have probably spent more money on advertising and knocked that number down 4 or 5% and got in more funding to do more work rather than sweat the extra 3%. But we try to be as frugal with donor funds as possible. I mean, our organization, to operate well at our current capacity, which is about 50 dogs and a lot of stateside activity with a lot of overseas transport, it's close to $2 million a year.
Yeah, I can imagine just how expensive it is to operate at that capacity. Are you guys, before we get into who gets these dogs, are you working with, I know you're a rescue, but are these dogs in a kennel situation? Are they with fosters while they're in this process, or what?
Well, no, we have our own veteran canine ranch in Magnolia, Texas, where we house our working dogs. The only fosters we use would be within about an hour's drive of the Houston, Texas area to where we can get to them if we need to. And those are only for extreme medical cases where they couldn't be at the ranch to be worked at. Now we have a kennel master and ranch staff that take care of the dogs 24/7.
So as these dogs are rehabbing, and rehabbing could include training or just sort of that transition from work to being a pet, I guess you could say, what is the length of that process? I know every dog is different, but is there sort of a kind of an overall type of a timeline?
Honestly, it's gonna depend on the dog. It could be done in 30 days. It could take 6 months. We see 5 to 7 dogs adopted per month, and we have a whole lot more intake requests than that. We would love to get more dogs out, and people generally ask, well, why can't you get more dogs out? Here's why. People that want to adopt are gracious, wonderful souls that often have many, many, many other pets. And a lot of times these dogs are not friendly to other dogs. They're not friendly to cats. And so we spend a lot of time vetting people only to find out that we can't adopt to them because they're in a no-win situation with the quantity of animals they have. So that's the quandary we find ourselves in.
Yeah, and I'm sure most rescues, no matter the type or the breed, are up against that same wall because the most giving type folks are typically the ones that have that in their nature. They want to help, they want to be the best pet parent or whatever you want to call them that they can be. So I can see where that could be a quandary. Now, Bob, you had mentioned that you guys have a tremendous network with all the military branches, and they call you guys to take the dogs when they're ready. What about for adoption? How do you get the word out about that? Of course, shows like this and other tours and websites and all that. But how are people finding out about you guys and potentially becoming an adoptee or adopter? I guess it is.
Google and social media and the web. That's it. Pure and simple.
And as we mentioned at the top, Malinois in particular are very intense dogs. And of course, most people, they don't know anything about them. Of course, everybody's seen a German Shepherd, known somebody that's had a German Shepherd. They know that temperament, but they don't know the temperament of a Malinois. How do they respond when they've already been vetted, the dog's in the home, and here they are, they have this, this intense dog breed in their home? How do most people respond when they take on that responsibility?
Well, we've vetted them well enough to not worry about it when we give them that responsibility. In most cases, the people that are adopting our dogs come to our ranch and meet the dogs that they are matched with and determine, which one is the best fit. We honestly have not had an issue with dogs that we place because of how selective we are with the individuals that do adopt them.
I like it. You guys are definitely doing your homework for sure with that. So definitely kudos to you on that. Because, you guys are, a different breed, if you will, compared to the typical rescue out there that most people are familiar with, that, whether they're breed rescues or whatever, it's a different concept for sure. So the dogs are, we've worked our way. We know what they are. We know what they've done. They're now retired. They're now up for adoption. They've been processed through your guys' system. And here they are living the lap of luxury, if you will, in the home. Is there any aftercare at all for the dogs? I mean, training or anything like that? Or is that solely on the responsibility of the new owner?
It is the responsibility of the adopter. Now, there are certain cases where if the dog comes into something catastrophic, they can't afford it, they reach out. We work with that on a case-by-case basis. The main issue we have with adopters, other than large animal populations in their own home, is the inability or unwillingness to cover veterinary care for senior dogs. And we will not adopt anyone who will not provide all needed care as a senior vet or pet, sorry,
right.
For the dog.
Sorry that is an important part of this. It's not a puppy. It has issues, and much more issues than your typical dog. As you mentioned, they've trained like professional athletes, and anybody that knows anything about pro football players or whatever, I mean, man, they've gone through the ringer, and I'm sure it's the same with the dogs as well. Bob, before we get into talking about how folks can help, what else would you like to mention about your organization, what you guys do? The floor is yours.
Let's talk about the dogs themselves for a minute. One thing you didn't ask me is, if I adopt a retired dog, how long can I expect that dog to live a quality life? And that's one thing to consider when you're going to adopt any dog that's a senior. I've seen our dogs make it literally to 17 years old. I've had one that went in 3 months and it broke my heart. So you have to be prepared for the heartache that can come with owning a senior dog, while optimistically understanding that if you keep your dog in the best shape possible, you're going to get 3, 4, 5 years. I got 5 years with a great Labrador Retriever named Oreo. He was the best dog in the world. Miss him to this day. And you have to, just understand that these are older dogs, and you're not going to have the length of life, but they have a wonderful quality of life, and you can help them provide that. As far as about us, I think we're unique in what we do, in that we spend our donors' money on work. We don't spend it on mass mailings, fundraising for people who haven't lived at whatever address in 10 years, or to get it lined in the bird cage. We don't want to repurpose these dogs and put them back to work. There are actually some out there that would want them to be returned to work after slaving their entire lives, and we don't think that's right or fair to the dog. And we want to be totally transparent to our donor base and try to be able to answer any questions they have. And other than that, I mean, that's my elevator pitch right there.
I like it. And I am just amazed when you said, I think you said that 93 cents on the dollar is going to the work that you guys do. That's almost unheard of in most nonprofit organizations. That's amazing.
It nearly caught up with me and bit me in the keister in last month, because I was looking at too low funds, and well, I tell you what, people stepped up, they supported us, and it's back up 100% where it needs to be now. But I've got to rethink the 93 cents per dollar. You know, we could do 88 cents and not sweat next November, but it's always going to be as high as we can make it, while operating stably and with room for absolute emergencies when they hit.
Again, such awesome work. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I know we were trying to get you guys on in October, but I had some dental surgery, and you know how that goes sometimes. But I am sure glad that
Been there, done that.
I'm sure glad that we got you on. Bob, before we end, how can folks reach out? Where's the best place to follow you guys, whether it's on social or on the web? And what can they do to help?
Okay, as far as where they can follow us, we're most active on Facebook. If you'll just go to Mission K9 on Facebook, you can find our page there. We're missionk9rescue.org on the web. You can donate there. Honestly, with every nonprofit, we come holding our hat in our hand, and we need donations to fund our work. I've already gone on about how well we spend our donors' funds. So I'd ask that potential donors think about how they'll be smiling in 6 months when they have donated to us, and see the great work that their money's done. And that's the best that's always the best for us and for our donor base.
There you have it. Bob Bryant. Bob Bryant. I apologize. He is the co-founder.
I don't care. Call me what you want.
Co-founder of Mission Canine Rescue, based out of Texas, and he is taking the time to talk to us today about his organization. Guys, go out, check it out. Check out the work that they're doing. Lots of stuff on social, and check out their website. These guys are doing great work. And Bob, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to present our organization to you. Hope you have a great holiday season.
Thank you. On behalf of my guest today, this is Robert. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is DogWorks Radio. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert and Michele Forto. Our producer is Robert Forto, and created for First Paw Media.
Did you know that Alaska Dog Works trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michele Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska Dog Works on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.